we begin to believe that we're God of our own life, that we can save ourselves.
I'm doing the right thing.
I can take care of it. I don't need God.
That is God telling me.
Satan appears like in a way that you can't.
God smacking me in the face, like.
But beyond that, it's in the silence that you hear the voice of God. And while demons will scare us.
And that's kind of what brought me back to Christ.
And that's the root of all sins. Disconnecting for a second for the sake of productivity. We can get so zeroed in on the stuff that we're doing, this tunnel vision, it can shut us off of a lot of stuff. And so when you rest it, like you rest for a little bit, it just allows the brain and the heart to breathe a little bit. When I go hunting, for example, because that's what we were talking about, I'll go out for a couple weeks at a time every fall, and it's a nice disconnect. It's terrifying. I mean, you're out there alone in the elements, maybe with a couple friends, but I do a lot of it alone too. And so you go in those dark places that you've been putting aside for the last year, 2 years, the rest of your whole life, whatever.
Yeah.
And you've got to wrestle with that stuff. But the silence is a sacred thing, man. And our culture is terrified of it. I'm scared of it.
Yeah.
But because it's in the silence that you wrestle with your demons, but beyond that, it's in the silence that you hear the voice of God. And while demons will scare us, and rightly so they should, something even more terrifying is the voice of God. And what I mean is in that silence, God can ask you to do anything. Drop your nets and follow me. And it could reveal itself. He could ask you to do anything. Move across the world and do this project or whatever it may be. And then the ball's in our court. And that scares us, because if we truly open our heart up to the Lord, man, we don't know what he's going to ask. We're going to lose control, but we don't really have the control to begin with. And yeah, so many different ways we can take this, but the silence.
Well, hold on. So where I was going at the beginning is you had mentioned Satan can use that against us.
Yeah.
That basically that drive. And that's kind of where I was going. But
Gotcha.
You're talking about, and I can disconnect. It's hard for me to make time, but I will make time, and I make time for my wife. I make time for my kids, and stuff like that. Making time a week to go out west, that's a little hard. I'd like to ask you about psychedelics too, but you're talking about opening up and grounding and being in the elements and hearing the voice of God. And so I think a lot, I mean, I'm always, my relationship with Christ and God has been growing at a exponential rate.
Yeah.
It's growing so fast, and I'm really learning to lean into my gut, and to me, that's my gut that is God telling me yes.
Yeah.
And I feel like he gives me these little affirmations, like, that's right, that's what I'm telling you to do. And so I'll give you an example. I talked about, I don't want to go into the whole story for time's sake because I've told it a bunch of times, but I had this really big experience in Sedona, and that's kind of what brought me back to Christ. And like I said, I had grown up Catholic, joined the SEAL teams, contracted for the CIA, acted like a total bachelor idiot for 20 years. And then, basically pushed God and Christ. It just pushed him aside. And not that I didn't believe, but I just didn't care.
Sure.
And anyways, so had this really profound experience. Basically, it was God smacking me in the face like 3 times right in a row. Totally different experiences, but all within about 15 minutes. And then I started seeing these reoccurring numbers all the time. And the first one was 444. It was everywhere I looked. And sometimes multiple times, three times at once.
Wow.
Like, first time it happened to me, it was 4:44 on the clock, 444 miles left to empty, and 4 hours and 44 minutes after a conversation that I just had with a very good friend of mine about how guardian angels are watching over me. And I was like, whoa, okay, it just happened again. And so now if I'm iffy about something, or here's an example. I just went and I interviewed this guy, Călin Georgescu, in Romania. He's running for president of Romania. They basically shut the election down. There's a possibility that he's under Russian influence. There's a possibility that they're just using Russian influence to not get him elected. Really confusing and complicated situation. And I was like, man, am I doing the right thing by giving this guy a voice? All I'm doing is giving him a voice. And I start seeing the reoccurring numbers everywhere I look. Wow. And to me, I'm like, I'm doing the right thing. And I had sent this tweet out, and it was the truth is like a lion, set it free and it'll defend itself. Right as I did that, this woman comes around the corner in the airport, and she has a big glittery lion head on her shirt. And I was just like, okay, like that's to me, that's God's voice, or that's God telling me you're doing the right thing, Shawn. Just lean into it. Yeah. Like I'm showing you, yes. I mean, so I'm curious, when you say you get out there and you're hearing the voice of God and he's telling you to do different things, what is that like? What is that to you?
Yeah. For me, one of the ways that it comes about is just like clarity from like all the stuff I've been going through before. So it's almost like a retrospective, like just time to reflect. So going back to like the work stuff, is a superpower that God's given us, like men in particular, to provide. Like we're the providers, and we got to do stuff. And if you don't, your family dies, the village dies, society dies, the world dies, right? So we got to put stuff out. We got to be producers. You know, Satan likes to use that because if we can be if we get too task oriented, then we forget about like making time for the main things, for the important things. So you were talking about these different little signs or affirmations that God would give you. Whenever you're just working like too fast or too much, like you're going to miss them. I'm sure there's 444s that you walked by, you know, before, like when you're just on a mission, just going. They were there the whole time. But what's going on now is like you're more aware of it, and the more aware of it you become, the more you'll see them, and then you'll really realize like how present God is in your life. Setting time aside to slow down, to be still and know that God is God is like, it's a sacred moment. If you think about Sunday, like the Lord says, keep holy the Sabbath. Don't do a bunch of servile labor. Doesn't mean like you can't do work. But it's first day of the week. It's like a proper orientation to God. If we can set aside work for a moment, it's not laziness, but it's actually an act of faith, because what we're doing is saying, God, I can bust my ass, but if I take this hour, this day, this week to be with you, be with my family, to do whatever, like I'm recognizing that you're God and I'm not. And so I'm capable of doing this work, capable of doing this stuff, but you know, you could end my life right now. Like I exist because you're holding me in existence. And so whenever we take these little breaks, it's like a profession of faith that God is going to take care of us. And so for me, to bring it back to the last question that you made, was like when I'm out in the woods, out in the mountains, it's just time for me to stop and like let the dust settle from the rat race that I'm always running, and then just get clarity. And for me, it doesn't take long. I mean, it could be an afternoon hunt, like going out to hunt whitetails. It could be a drive in the truck when I have the radio off, nothing at all, a 20-minute drive. Could be working out just for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever, but a little bit of space to decompress and let the thoughts fall in line. That, for me, that's kind of how the Lord speaks. Like I got all these puzzle pieces that I've been picking up, and whenever I take that time of silence, I can put all those little puzzle pieces in order, and then I get the big picture. So I don't know if that makes sense. But.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's. I think what you're saying is clarity.
Yeah, mindfulness. It's all this stuff. It's all over pop culture. It's all over the place because there's something behind it. But it's definitely the clarity.
What were you saying? How does Satan take advantage of this?
Yeah. So what, most simply put, is like he'll allow us to fall so deep into our own endeavors that we begin to believe that we're God of our own life, that we can save ourselves. If I can work this hard and make this kind of income and do all these things, whether it doesn't even have to be an income. It could be productivity of any sort. It could be whatever you're doing. But whenever that becomes the main thing, we end up worshiping that, an idol. And then the lie that we begin to believe is that we're self-sustaining. Like, I can take care of it. I don't need God. we begin to believe that we're in control of everything, like we're God. So that's the way that Satan will do it. It's a very tactical way of him to get us off path. Because if he knocks on the door, Satan appears like in a way that you can't deny that it's Satan. You're going to say like, no, get behind me, in the name of Jesus, be gone, because it's going to be so obvious. So therefore, he likes to hit us where we're strong. He goes to our talents, and then from there he starts, up in the pride and the ego, and that's the root of all sins, pride, and so that's kind of a simple way of putting how he manipulates it.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.